I'm super excited to talk to Courtenay Cabot Venton today. Courtney, tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
Hi, thank you for including me in this incredible set of conversations that you've been leading. So I am the executive director of an organization called the Share Trust that supports women's self-help groups, or also known as solidarity groups or empowerment collectives all around the world. And I'm based in Boston in the US.
Courtney, I have been hearing about you for really a long time. So tell us a bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, it's a little bit convoluted, and I think I probably wear too many hats and get excited about too many things, but I guess that's a good way to go through life. But really, the root of a lot of what I do started in high school. I cared deeply about protecting the environment. It was one of my passions when I was young. And I quickly realized that if I wanted to convince people to protect the environment, that I needed to articulate the economic case for why that was important. So I ended up becoming an economist in college, specifically for that very reason, so that I could help to really create powerful evidence for why things like protecting the environment are important. And that has permeated through my whole career. I transitioned into doing much more work around poverty reduction in so-called developing countries, and have continued to use economics as a way to really powerfully articulate why it's so important to invest in poverty reduction and to invest in people's empowerment.
Courtney, talk us through a little bit more what you do on a day-to-day basis now, where you invest the money. Give us a bit more background on the Share Trust.
So I set up the Share Trust because I was asked to evaluate a women's self-help group program in Ethiopia close to 10 years ago now. And I fell in love with the approach. I could not believe what these women were doing in their communities. It was completely different to anything else that I had been asked to evaluate. And I've looked at everything from education to health to livelihoods, etc. And I truly couldn't believe how these women were on fire creating change in their communities, despite living in very difficult circumstances. So I came home determined to do more, trying to figure out how I could add to the space. It took me a few years because I didn't really want to set up a new organization unless I felt like there was a gap. And I really did find that there was a gap because a lot of the work that we do tends to focus on providing people with access to resources and really ignores how incredibly important investing in these social constructs and social empowerment and self-efficacy and the ways that women work together through collective action is actually transformative for how we think about poverty reduction. So I finally set up the Share Trust. My day-to-day is a whole crazy mess and mixture, as happens with any relatively young organization, of working with my team, fundraising, supporting women's groups, finding out where they are, what their needs are, how we can get behind them, figuring out how to get large-scale donors to invest in this approach and really understand why it's so important for everything else that they do. So it's a whole mixture of things. I think, though, that I probably thrive on that. I love having different challenges, different conversations, different things to do every day. And it's very easy to be passionate about this work because it's just so exciting. So that's a little snapshot of a day to day, basically chaos.
I know about that. Courtney, tell us about a recent campaign you've invested in.
So last year, we started something called Ignite. It's a global giving circle because when we would speak to our friends and colleagues about these groups, these women's groups in Ethiopia and also in many other countries, we found that it really resonated, not just with women. We also see men, but also other marginalized groups like LGBT groups, disabled groups, really finding strength in solidarity. And this was something that was universal, that we could all identify with the power of circling, whether it was my friend saying, oh my gosh, my mom's in a cancer support group. This sounds so similar. Or whether it was your children's play group. It sounds so simple, but part of my job as an economist is to link evidence with impact. And the fact that there's all this evidence behind this idea that circling is actually really impactful was really, really compelling to me. So the idea with Ignite is that we're a global giving circle bringing together people from all over the world who recognize the power of collective action and who want to be a part of this conversation and engage with it. Last year, we supported women's groups in Afghanistan, which was incredibly powerful because after the fall of the Taliban and then with the Taliban banning women from working for NGOs just before Christmas this year, it's one of the only ways that we're able to ensure that women are getting access to services. We were able to share messages of solidarity with the women in Afghanistan, both us sending messages to them, but them also telling us about how they were creating change in their communities so that we could really learn from them about the power of collective action in such a difficult circumstance. And this year, we're supporting groups in Kampala in Uganda through a whole network of local partners that we're working with. And that includes youth groups, women's groups, girl groups of girls who've experienced sexual violence, LGBTQ groups. It's quite amazing how these groups are creating change in their communities across a whole range of challenges.
It's so inspiring, Courtney. Thank you for expanding on that. Courtney, what would your main motivator be to, it's a pretty tall order that you set for yourself, and it's an incredible achievement to do all that much. What is your motivator or the main thing motivating you?
I think for me, it really comes back to that piece of collective action. We spend a lot of time focusing on individuals, leaders, people who are doing amazing things, and that's absolutely right. But I think we've really lost sight of how powerful it is when we work collectively, especially if you're from a particularly marginalized group. It's very scary to go and advocate for access to services or human rights if you're doing it on your own. But if you're 20 people doing it together, it's much more effective, much more powerful. And for me, that's a huge motivator. I think we've lost track. We have this focus, especially in America, on rugged individualism and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you can succeed. And I think that loses sight of the fabric that holds us all together and how powerful that is in allowing change to occur. So for me, that's what really motivates me every day.
Courtney, what would you say is your superpower? You are a very powerful woman. You bring about a lot of change. What is it that makes you so good?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I guess I would say, I think as an economist, one thing that's been really powerful for me is marrying head with heart. Knowing when you intuitively feel and see something that's incredible, but then being able to really articulate why that's so powerful. And I think, at least in the sphere that I work in, where I'm needing to convince people who are holding large pots of money around how they can most effectively give that money, being able to say, not only will you feel how incredible this is if you spend time with these groups, but on top of that, I can tell you that it is one of the most effective ways to give your money, to invest your money, to help other people. I think that that is definitely a superpower because it really resonates with a lot of people who want to know that the way that they lean in into how they give into this world is really helping to create change. So I think maybe that's my superpower. I know it's not the most exciting one, but it's definitely one that's helped me a lot in my work.
I love it, Courtney. I think it's a superpower, and you've done extremely well. And having had or managed programs on the ground in Ethiopia, I know that exactly what you say is so true and so powerful. Courtney, what would your top tips be for other women? So if there is a woman out there that has money that wants to make a change, what would your top tips be?
Get behind these other women. I often say that under many a proverbial mango tree. I have worked in over 40 countries, and it's fair enough. Usually the ends of those conversations is people coming up to me and saying, we need a school so badly for our kids. Can you help us? My mother is sick. Can you help me? And I get that. When I meet with the self-help groups, they come up to me and they say, I just joined the local government's office as their women's rights leader. We're joining together to create a climate march next week. They can't stop telling me about what they are doing. And that to me is like, that's what sets the world on fire. And to hear people who are fighting against incredible odds to be that on fire, I would say lean in, get behind these women who are finding ways to work together to create enormous change. The other thing I would add is to learn from them. We have to stop thinking of ourselves, because we typically have resources in the West, as people who know, people who can come in. It comes from a good place because we have education, we have experience, we have money, but really getting to that place of, wow, what can I learn from these women that can influence how I see myself in my life, is also, I think, incredibly powerful and unites us around the world in a way that's much more equitable and acknowledging of all of the journeys that we are on. So that would be my other piece of advice.
I love it, Courtney. What are your plans and dreams, Courtney? What's up? Where is the journey going?
I would love to see much more acknowledgement, especially kind of in halls of power, where it's very easy to say, let's invest in infrastructure, let's build schools. All of these things are important, but to actually see acknowledgement of how important social capacities are, these networks, and how people work together, and why things like empowerment and self-efficacy fundamentally affect everything that we do. I would also love to see our little giving circle take off and become a way that people can connect all over the world. But I think all of these pieces, even as we slowly move forward and see change, will really help to contribute to a much wider narrative that's really powerful.
Courtney, I can't wait to promote Ignite, and thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.